Welcome back. Let's bring into the show former acting DHS Secretary Chad Wolf. Chad, it's a pleasure to have you on again. Okay, let's have you sit tight. Let's deal with this. In less than a minute, you're going to hear Biden make numerous blunders and gaffes about foreign policy. He flip-flops within like 50 seconds on talking to Putin. Then he said he's not the commander-in-chief. He made odd comments. More of that you're going to hear. But somehow to MSNBC, this was a masterclass in foreign policy. Watch this.
Is Putin ready to talk? I'm not ready to talk to Putin. I'm prepared to talk to any leader who wants to talk, including if Putin called me and wanted to talk. I'm going to go to South Korea. We're going to get the chip. What are you doing? I'm following the advice of my commander-in-chief.
President Biden submitted to a live televised cognitive test tonight by taking questions in an hour-long press conference. What followed was nothing less than the most masterful, televised presidential press conference about foreign policy. This is as good as it gets with an American president.
Really? That's as good as it gets? That sounds like a pretty low standard.
Well, without a doubt, it's a low bar. So anytime that he does slightly well, the president, you have folks coming out saying that he hit a home run because the bar has been so low for so long that the expectations of the American people, and I guess the pundits themselves, it's just as low. But I think when the majority of Americans, an average American looks at that and sees the president talking about, well, he'll talk to whoever, that doesn't square up with reality. The reality is he has not talked with Putin in over a couple of years, it's been reported. How do you expect to bring that war to a close and bring peace to that continent when you're not talking to the people that are responsible? So, I think it's problematic on a variety of fronts. And I think every time the president unfortunately talks, whether it's in a press conference or a debate, more and more Americans are more concerned about it.
I mean, this is a rapidly diminishing, shrinking presidency. It's like he's been in a bell jar for all this time. And now that because of the White House cover-up, that's the accusation, the media cover-up, too, that's the accusation, all of a sudden it's bursting out into the open because the polls are so bad, because they don't like his policies. He said last night current border crossings, Chad, are lower today than when Trump left office. That's false. He's talking about weekly numbers. There were something like 84,000 illegal aliens caught at the border last month. When Trump left, there was something like 75,000. He doesn't include the 2 million gotaways and millions entering through Biden's CBP-1 parole app, that pipeline there. But what do you make of Homeland Security reportedly recently arresting 16 terrorist suspects in states from California to North Carolina?
Well, it's problematic. I mean, it's problematic. It's good in the sense, obviously, that they're arresting dangerous individuals and getting them off the street. But the question is, as they came across that southern border, why weren't they properly vetted? Why weren't they stopped before they come into the country and be released into American communities? But we've seen this from the Biden administration as they parole people into the United States, and then they figure out if they are a danger or a threat once they get here, and then you have to go and find them, pick them up, and remove them. It should be the opposite approach. Look, the president also talked about how encounters are at a 50% of what they were. What he didn't tell the American people is it's 50% lower than the 300,000 number that has come across the border on his watch in any given month, which is the high watermark of 1 month under his presidency. And so now they're at 150 or 120,000, and somehow that's a big win. It's not a big win because even that number is the worst that we have seen. So it's all in the context that you make these comments. And of course, the White House and the president and others around him are not being transparent with the American people.
Chad Wolf, if you could please sit tight for just a second. We need to go to the Keystone State, Pennsylvania. We're going to come back to you in just a moment. Former President Trump and Vice President Harris both campaigning in Pennsylvania this weekend ahead of next week's RNC convention. Grady Trimble is in Washington with the story. Grady.
Good evening, Liz. Former President Trump and Vice President Harris will be on opposite sides of the Keystone State this weekend, sharing very different visions for the country, but with the same goal of rallying their supporters to turn out in November. Trump and the GOP are reaching out to workers in PA, one of the top states for fossil fuel production. The party platform released this week ahead of next week's convention calls for unleashing American energy and cutting taxes. Trump's rally tomorrow is also generating speculation about his VP pick, if only for geographical reasons. Butler County is close to Ohio, which is home of Senator J.D. Vance. But another potential Trump running mate says all of the possible picks are still in the dark.
Do you know yet? Has he asked you yet?
Nobody knows except President Trump.
On the other side of the state, this trip will mark the 6th time Vice President Harris has visited Pennsylvania this year. There are more eyes on her this time around, though, as the Biden campaign is reportedly testing her against Trump. But publicly, Harris is still defending Biden.
But one thing we know about our president, Joe Biden, is that he is a fighter. So we will continue to fight, and we will continue to organize, and in November we will win.
And Pennsylvania is one of the states that make up Democrats' so-called blue wall. They're trying to lock it down, but Republicans are trying to break through it. So we can expect not only former President Trump, but also whoever his running mate happens to be to spend a lot of time in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Liz?
Grady Trimble, great to have you back on the show. Chad, let's get back to you. I want to get to this story. You know, the media, the Democrats are setting the bar really low for Biden right now. The Biden campaign and Biden is pushing this, that a cognitive test is his daily job. Really? Watch this.
He cannot do another 4 years. He cannot beat Donald Trump. That they are sticking with this man is infuriating, irresponsible, and it's political malpractice.
I mean, the reason that these conversations are in public was because there was no way to have them in private because the president was cloistered and did not want to hear it.
Why is this the first press conference in 8 months? 8 months they've been hiding him away, keeping him away from a solo press conference with the press. Why is it that in the Michigan primary in February of this year, why did he not campaign in Michigan? Not once for 3 weeks leading up to the primary did he go to Michigan. He was afraid to go to Michigan.
Then you got Larry O'Donnell saying, basically Biden submits to a televised cognitive test by taking questions in a press conference. Really?
It's remarkable. I think what most Americans saw on that debate stage is what a lot of us have been seeing for the past several years. And it's why you see almost all of President Biden's appearances heavily scripted. It's the reason why he doesn't do spur-of-the-moment press conferences, right? They have to be heavily scripted. He has to know which reporters to call on. I don't think that that's what most Americans want to see from their chief executive, from that commander-in-chief. They want someone that is knowledgeable, that has command of the issues, that can talk about most, if not any issue of importance to the American people in the drop of a hat, and they don't see that in President Biden. And I think that's what's concerning most Americans. So they can continue these scripted conversations, whether it's cabinet meetings or the lack of cabinet meetings, I should say, and everything else. But most Americans see what that's about, and they see the dramatic difference between that and what we saw with former President Trump.
Show the Washington Post Megan McArdle saying the Biden White House has basically been punishing reporters who cover Biden's decline, asking questions, they're cutting off access to senior staffers. How does the Fourth Estate cover the executive branch when they're doing that? Final word.
Well, it's amazing. I don't know how they do that. I don't know how the press should be asking the hard questions. We certainly saw that during the Trump administration. We saw it every day of every week, and you just don't see the same coverage of the Biden administration, although it has turned, obviously, since that debate, and they're starting to ask the hard questions. And my question to them is, where have you been for the last 3 years?
Chad Wolf, you're great. Thanks for joining us. Still ahead.